Hi guys, so here is the first exercise of the day for charcoal chiaroscuro portraiture. I'm going to be sketching out the initial marks using a pencil. You should use a high H pencil. And while I'm pressing down hard enough that you can see these marks on the screen, you'll want to do this as lightly as possible. So your marks aren't going to look quite so dark as mine do. I'm starting by sketching out kind of an egg-shaped oval. It's a little bit wider at the top and then narrows as I move down. And we can edit kind of the borders of this, but this basically is going to form our face. Now straight down, we're going to draw a straight line. This is going to form the center line of our face. And then halfway down, we're also going to do a straight line. This is where the eyes are going to be. Now I'm going to take this line and divide it into 5. I find it's easiest to sort of start at the middle and then divide each section on the side into 2. Now, if this is the top of the head, we're going to put the hairline just slightly lower than that. So I'm going to do a straight line. And now from the hairline to the chin, we're going to divide this area into thirds. So we've got 1/3 here, 1/3 here, and a final third to the chin. So now I'm going to move downwards from either side of the center eye width. And from the eye line down, I'm going to draw a light circle about halfway down this. This is going to form the basis of the nose, and 2 little lines moving to the sides because the inner corners of the eyes align with the sides of the nose. Now I'm going to draw a lemon shape over this line for the upper eyelid. The upper eyelid will come about 2/3 over this line and about 1/3 underneath in a lemon shape. And then the upper eyelid is going to be a little bit more squished from the skin and fat of the upper eyelid. The pupil isn't going to be entirely visible here. We're only going to see about 2/3 of it, so I'm going to mark in the pupils here from side to side. And moving up to this line, I'm going to get the eyebrows. The eyebrow is going to go about 2/3 over the eye and almost 1/3 to the side, but extending slightly beyond that. You can keep this even by just putting more lines to kind of line up where the highest part is, where the lowest part is, as we move across. Now I want to add a little bit more form to the nose, so I'm going to move into the base of the circle and turn this more into kind of like a triangle shape that's sort of soft at the end, and then 2 nostrils, moving in from side to side here. Then I'm just sort of carving out the area that we're going to get into the dark. And moving in on the top of this circle, I'm going to move in so that we can move up the bridge of the nose, and then out as we approach the eyebrows. From the bottom of the nose to the chin, I'm going to divide this area into thirds. So that's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. The lips, the side of the ellipse, are going to align with where the pupils would be. So directly down from this spot here. And they're going to be centered around this upper third. So I'm going to draw a straight line with 2 sides. The upper lip tends to be smaller than the lower lip. I'm going to sketch that out first. And this little cupid's bow is going to be narrower than the widest point of the lower lip, which will make a little bit more sense in a second. We can dip down slightly into the upper lip. Then the lower lip is going to come right above this little spot here. The widest point is going to be just slightly wider than the widest point of the cupid's bow before turning back inwards. And now the ears are going to kind of be between the tops of the eyebrows and the bottom of the nose, slightly up from that. And I'm not going to put too much detail in here. I'm just going to have two additions side by side. And now I can start to carve out the face a bit, make it more like a face. So I'm going to create two angles to form the jawline. I'm going to have the sides of the jaws around the sides of the mouth, then tapering inwards as we move up to the head. I'm also going to mark out the side planes of the face, which are going to be here and here. The side plane is going to sort of come through the upper eyelid, come out around here, and then duck back down around here. This is going to help us position our shadowed areas. And the hair. I'm going to make the hairline kind of at a side part and just brush some hair marks over the page. Okay, now it's time to use the charcoal. So at hand, I'm going to be using my finger for smudging, and also I have a little brush for any further detail. I'm going to start on the inner corners of the eyes. So there's going to be a dark area around here, and I'm just going to hatch that in. I'm going to hatch in, and first you can lightly mark out, but I'm going to hatch in a darker area as well on either side of the upper eyelid, leaving a clear space in between, and within the iris. And now again here, a darker space. And we can even move this shadow all the way up into the ear and along the side plane of the face. You can either use hatching or use your charcoal on its side for this. I'm using hatching just to keep it consistent. It's okay if these marks go outside of the lines here because we're going to be darkening up these areas in any event. Okay, now moving towards the chin, there's going to be this dark area underneath the chin on either sides of the lips and on the upper lip. There's also going to be a darker area here and at the base of the chin. And I'm going to use my charcoal on its side to get some shading underneath the chin. For the base of the nose, I'm going to start along this line that I've done, marking off the volume. Move up on either side and then carry that shaded area all the way down. And then finally, using lighter pressure on this side, because one side will be more in the shade than the other, I'm going to mark out this side plane of the face. We can also just very lightly get some marks underneath the eyes on this side and along the ear, and not quite moving up to the top of the head. Try to angle your charcoal to its side as you move into the very tops of the hair. And you might want to switch out for larger charcoal for this. And I'm just going to move on to the eyebrows too while I'm here. Now I'm ready to start smudging. Actually, I'll do a little bit of shade underneath the hair here. So I'm going to use my hand for this, but you can also use a paper towel, or if you have a smudger at home, one of those, a cotton ball also will work, or a paintbrush for really fine details. And I'm just going to use my finger, so I'm just going to smudge. And I'm kind of blending these areas into the light. I'm getting a little bit of shading in the eyes because the eyeball, or the whites of the eyes aren't actually white. They tend to be in the shade. I'm going to move the shade over the brow ridge before moving inwards on either side of the eyes. And again, moving this amount of shading into the eye and slightly below it. The underside of the nose, I'm going to shade this. So you'll notice as we're going along that charcoal mainly works in areas of shadow. You're using it like you would watercolors almost, where instead of using it for contours or the lines, we're using it for areas that are dark. I'm going to move into the lips. And now start blending this area around the chin. Below the chin. And coming up along the sides of the face. We can kind of blend down around here, where we move into cheekbones. And we can move the shading here in a circular motion, kind of swiping along both sides of the face. Blending, blending, blending. Blending the shade into the underside of the cheekbones and along the sides of the face. So now that we have our first layer down, we can start to refine these details and these light and dark areas. Let me get a fresh piece of charcoal. Thin ones, these are the short ones, well, I'll use this. Okay, now you need to be mindful of where your hand is so that you're not smudging this as you go along. I'm going to start up here and get some shading in where the underside of the hair would be. I'm going to move around what I can see of the ears, so that we can have the hair kind of tucked behind the ear and then coming forward. With hair, you want to think about what the darkest areas are first, and then just sort of allow the lighter areas to remain as highlights. bring this shade down here. Okay, and a little bit of shading along the hairline. Now moving back into the face, let's get the eyebrows a bit darker. And let's darken up some of the borders, the areas where shade's going to be hitting the face. I'm moving more shade into the eyes. And now I'm going to reinforce the upper eyelid. You can use a paintbrush if you want to kind of really smooth that out. And then I'm going to make a stronger upper eyelid. I'm going to darken the eyes, just leaving space for the highlight. I'm also going to darken up either side of the bridge of the nose. Okay, and now I'm going to do much the same thing on the other side, just darkening up the eyebrow, getting some more shade into the eye, darkening up the upper eyelid, now moving down the sides of the nose. So I'm going to move in here along the sides of the nostrils. Shade that in. Get some more shade at the base, both sort of the core shadow here and the base of the nose, then moving back upwards. And then shading in the underside of the nose on either side. And if you can, lightly tapering the charcoal around either side. You have to be very careful if you're using a brush that it doesn't just completely pick up all the charcoal. And you can come back in with your eraser if you need to highlight any area, so I'm just going to do that on the side of her nose, and then come back in with some reinforcement. Going to make the nostrils just a little bit darker. They tend to be smaller than we think they are. And I'm just going to smudge that a bit. Okay, now moving from the base of the nose down, I'm going to get to the upper lip. So just reinforcing this. And then the lower lip. And I'm kind of trying to work the volume to either side of the lip, and a little bit on the base. Going to soften this a bit with my brush. And you can transfer the charcoal from one part of the portrait to another by using your brush. Here I'm going to get a shadow cast on one side of her face, where the light is being obscured from the side. Darkening up the center of the lips. Reinforcing that area of shadow underneath the chin. Reinforcing the shade around the sides of the jawline. Around the sides of the face. There's almost always a shadow underneath the jaw that kind of goes to one side, so I'm just going to use heavier pressure to shade one side of the throat. And then we can just blend towards the other side. Blend upwards so it's not such a dramatic contrast and we get some of that sfumato effect. I'm just going to complete this side of the face to keep the video short enough to upload. Let me just move down here. There's so much that you can sort of fiddle around with. So I'm going to have to time myself, and you'll find with willow charcoal especially, it's so light that you can just build up layer after layer. And you can see how over time you just keep building and building up your portrait, and it sort of becomes more and more real as you blend and build up these darker areas. I'm going to leave this here just to keep this short, but to continue, you just do pretty much the same thing on the other side, but slightly lighter.